Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. Imposter stream. Imposter stream. I think I did that last time. Imposter syndrome stream 3.
I think you did.
You know, just when we finish doing these, I'm going to finally be able to say the name correctly. But it's pertinent to mention the name because today we are talking about imposter syndrome.
And what that actually is.
And what it actually is. So, Cassie, let's talk a little bit about the name imposter syndrome, the name of the zine that is live on Kickstarter right now. You can find the link down in the description. $5 gets you access to a bunch of different game design concepts and roll tables, maybe some fiction, various different things, but $5 to back on Kickstarter.
Right. We would definitely appreciate it if you check it out.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like and what's in it. But so the name of the whole project is called Imposter Syndrome.
Yes.
And we were going to talk a little bit about why that is and what that concept is. Many of you may have heard of it, some of you may not. Tell us about imposter syndrome.
Right. Sometimes it's referred to as perceived fraudulence or imposter phenomenon, which honestly is kind of a better term. So when I refer to the zine, it's going to be imposter syndrome. What I'm about to define, it's going to be imposter
perceived
phenomena.
fraudulence. Right, yeah.
Imposter phenomena.
Imposter phenomenon.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So specify
IP.
again, you're saying, yeah.
We're going to call it IP, imposter phenomena.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's not really a syndrome. First of all, it's not actually in the DSM-5. It is kind of a new thing that the scientific community is looking at. I think one of the first studies was focused on women, particularly high-achieving women, back in 1978, I believe, was the study. But of course, since then, the studies have spread to men and all that stuff to everybody, and we're finding that it's really actually quite common. Up to 70% of all adults have at least experienced some feelings of imposter phenomena.
And when you say this, Keel's here. How's it going, Keel?
Hi,
Good
Keel.
to see you. Good to see anybody joining us. But when you say this imposter phenomenon, so you say these studies, right? You mentioned a lot of times we see it in the workplace, mostly,
Correct.
Right? That's where we see it is people going to their jobs, having some sort of job, probably having degrees for said job, having training at the very least, gone to some sort of school, maybe learned something.
Exactly.
But they're still in their position, and you said, 70% or more of people potentially perceiving that they are fraudulent in some way, that they are or that don't belong where they are.
Yes, that they will be perceived as a fraud.
Oh, right, basically. That the people around them, rather, let's say that their colleagues or their peers are people that...
And we have to, to make a more clear definition.
Yeah, please, yeah.
You will find, a number of definitions, but basically here's what they all have in common, is that you doubt your own skills and talents and accomplishments, even if you might have external reminders, like a trophy, or the book you published, or the game you made, but still have anxiety about being perceived as a fraud, an imposter among people either you work with or your community. It can be even in your relationship.
Oh, yes, exactly. The studies and where they were
really
looking at it was in work, but it can even be in your regular relationships. And to some degree, it is a feeling, like you said, of doubting yourself.
Yes,
there's a lot of self-doubt. And I don't know, I guess in the context of performing in front of others, a lot of times in a work context, but like you said, relationships, in a sense, you have to realize and we'll talk, I guess,
right.
how you'll handle it later, because I guess I don't want to broad stroke that too much. But what I wanted to say instead was, I don't know. Go ahead.
Do you have a question about it?
Let's say that. Well, so the name of the project, you did mention we would go over that. You mentioned, why is it called that, and
it's the fact that it's so pervasive, that we found it everywhere, and that, when Nix and I talk to each other, even among friends, we find that these creators who have products out there still sometimes these feelings of incompetency, even though there's plenty of evidence that they're not.
Exactly.
And I just wanted to shine a light on it because I've certainly had my own feelings with it, and it's partly why I probably haven't put out as much artwork or participated in the community as much as I would like, because I was already self-doubting myself so much that I'd be like a fraud from the get-go, you know?
Yeah.
So to shine a light on it means that we get to tackle these concerns, and that you get to shine a light on yourself too.
Exactly. Because yeah. Continue, please.
Because there are some upsides to it.
Exactly, right? Yeah.
You know, first of all, remember, it's not a syndrome in the fact that in the sense that you are sick.
Yeah, it's not something to actually be cured. It's more
Right.
of a state of mind, an outlook that you deal with.
I think it's a problem with, like, self-perception.
Exactly. And it's more something you can shift about yourself and less something you take a medicine for that is biological. Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes, you know, for a lot of people, these imposter syndromes are kind of temporary, especially, like, if you join a new job or something. Once you settle in and get accustomed, it'll be okay. But sometimes, depending on the environment, if you aren't validated and supported or given encouragement, you know, then that can hurt. You know, then you'll probably still have those imposter syndrome feelings.
Exactly. And as you pointed out, one of the most important things to consider is a lot of times the feelings are intellectual property. No.
Oh my God.
Imposter phenomenon. I know.
Shoot.
I love acronyms, but I guess I remember a lot of them. There, whatever.
Right.
But I was talking about the important thing to remember is that, like you said, it can come on because you don't get enough reinforcement, or even when you have published something, or Keel's here says it's intrinsically tied to confidence when it comes down to it, and
that's a big part of it.
I want to say another important part of it that you have to realize, right? First, part of it is identifying that you're seeing this in yourself, maybe.
Right.
I think that it is a privileged perspective to be able to look at yourself and be aware enough to tell, oh man, I'm experiencing this.
Yeah.
So I find it interesting that
I just want to say hi. Oh, I was gonna say hi, Tim, but you're Tabletop Terror.
That's me. Yes. Sorry. No. Okay. Yeah. So say hi to me. No.
Jeez.
Oh man. Oh, but I don't remember exactly what I was saying about imposter. Keel said it comes down to confidence, but what I was saying was...
Were you going to go to the cultural aspect? Because there's, like,
yes.
things that happen in parenting that can only, you know...
Well, and so what I did want to say is it is potentially a feeling of great isolation. The important thing is when you perceive yourself as a fraud, if you consider, let's say, like I said, the state of mind you're in, you potentially feel like others around you are looking at you and think you aren't performing as well as you should be, or that you aren't doing what you should be, or whatever, you know, this may be, whatever you may feel like makes you a fraud.
Right.
But because it involves them, it's more difficult probably than ever to dispel it, to solve it, because you can't go to them and say, hey, I feel this way, because that would then out you as this fraud that you are, right? If you're right about it, there's this is the part of you that's dangerous. If you're right about you're being a fraud, which you aren't, right? I can say unequivocally, unless you're a fraud, unless you're a con man, right? I guess, I don't know.
But the best thing you can do is actually open up about it, especially to people, let's say outside of that realm. If I feel a fraud at work, maybe I'll talk to just a friend or my spouse who has a step back from that and can actually look at everything a little more objectively. You know, what accomplishments that might have happened at work, you know.
Yeah, and to be able to sort of shore up that resiliency. Keel says, yes, the sense of isolation is real, because when feeling like an imposter, you keep that shiz to yourself.
Right.
And that's the really interesting thing about it. By keeping it to yourself, you double down on the problem, you compound the problem. But, as you pointed out, these feelings can have benefits. It sounds crazy, but this level of awareness and potentially self-reflection, because if you're considering, if you're thinking you're a fraud so much and you're ruminating on it, you're thinking about it a lot.
Yes. So, for instance, like one of the silver linings that I found was that by self-doubting that, and also wanting to be a hard worker because you don't want to be seen as a fraud, you're going to do more research, but that means you're going to have stronger decision-making skills, because you're like, no, I have to do the work, otherwise I'm going to be found out. I need to have the right answer.
Right, it's like motivating to some degree.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you turn that on yourself, because I feel like when you're stuck in that mindset, it's very easy to just self-criticize instead of slowing down our decision-making process, which, being a good decision-maker, like, that's really beneficial. And objectively look at yourself, be like, well, I did do this today, and I did do that today, so maybe I didn't do just nothing today, you know?
Yeah, and it causes you to more seriously look at what you are doing and what you are accomplishing, potentially, or you can use it to, and that should hopefully help you not feel like a fraud.
And you're more susceptible to new information and new ideas.
That's
which is
really
important.
cool. Yeah, okay, because you don't feel like you're, I don't know, too good for it, so to speak.
Exactly, because you're like, oh, what could be possible, you know? And I think in terms of like creativity, that's really good for making new scenes or making new games. You know, you have to say what if to somebody's idea, and acknowledge it.
Exactly. Part of the way I like to say that in a way is when I'm talking to somebody, it's important, I think, in certain instances, you know, if we're brainstorming or collaborating to try to come up with this new idea, this brand new thing, you know, whatever that may be. What we want is we want to figure out what we can do and how cool it can be. And we want to make sure we focus on all of the best parts, even though we know there are things that are going to be issues or problems that are going to come up.
Yeah.
Right? But we're going to have the conversation about how we would do it, not about why we can't. There are plenty of reasons that we may not be able to do something. That's kind of an easy conversation to have. But I don't think people make good, innovative projects, games, ideas, inventions, whatever, by worrying about what issues they're going to come up against. They flip it around and they instead go, I'm going to do this. The issues are what I need to do to get there. Doing it the other way makes it seem like these issues are insurmountable. Keel says, imposter phenomenon is the ultimate catalyst for a self-improvement quest. Exactly. And that's the interesting part about feeling it in yourself. It can be a skill to some degree. You know, that same ability to self-criticize can, as you pointed out, help you so much in various aspects.
Right. And then another silver lining we found is that it increases the capacity for interpersonal interaction.
That was another really interesting
benefits.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, in a collaborative environment, like, you freaking need that. That's great.
Right? Yeah. So basically, the idea that you feel like a fraud, that you feel like an imposter, is potentially a marker and something that will help you create better interpersonal relationships, you're saying.
Correct. Or at least you'll certainly be more motivated to foster interpersonal relationships because you want to make sure that you're integrated with whatever group or community that you're concerned about being an imposter in.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, because you want to prove your worth to them. So you need to show it all the time.
Yeah. And
that means being like, hey, can I help you? What's going on? You know?
Right? It becomes a very motivated individual.
Yes.
Keel says, great point about the self-awareness aspect. Being self-aware enough and vulnerable enough to recognize and acknowledge that you're experiencing imposter phenomenon. Exactly. And again, to consider it a thing that happens in your life rather than something that is wrong with you or something bad or something you struggle with. Instead, it can become and you can consider it more a tool to help you, something that you have that other people don't have. You have something inside of you to go, hey, wait, hold on, check that again.
Right.
That's not bad. That's really good.
But you need to make sure that you say, hold on, check that again, when it comes to criticizing yourself, like I mentioned, because that's where we get down on ourselves and can really bust our self-confidence, especially if we're struggling and don't have like support or validation, and you need to try and provide that for yourself.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to turn that light inwards and be like, as the example I mentioned earlier with like, I did this, I thought I did nothing all day, but I slowed down, looked at what I did and was like, oh, okay, it wasn't a waste.
Exactly. Like you said, you almost have to prove it to yourself. Literally go back and look at what really happened. You have to do the research. And I love it in that aspect where there have been times where we've been talking where one of us will say to the other, oh man, I've been so lazy today. And the other will go, well, no, but I was talking to you earlier and you said you did this.
Yeah.
And you did this. Wait, and you did that? You know, and like
and
you
then
said,
I saw you do this.
And it's like, it's so easy to make that snap decision, or sometimes we'll say the fixed action pattern. Your brain is so quick to make a decision and jump to a conclusion, and then you just run with that.
Yeah.
But you can kind of go, okay, hold on, wait, how can I use this for myself? You know?
Oh, so I want to mention with this, so imposter syndrome, I'm going to be writing definitely a little article about. There's a lot that I'm finding, so I'm going to try and tailor it, of course, towards the RPG creative experience. because apparently there's like some cultural aspects behind it. There's like, parenting strategies that lead to imposter syndrome, which I'm definitely going to share because that's just wild. It's primarily criticism, and then the softer parenting style of using universal superlative praise, or just praise that isn't
like transactional.
It's just too broad. It's too broad.
Oh, it's too broad. Oh, okay.
Like,
you were describing to me examples. Yeah.
Like mine would, let's say a broad one is, "Oh my God, Nixon, you are the best at math at your school." And then something more specific that a kid would probably enjoy a little more because it's more personal is, "You did great on that math test, Nixon. Oh my God, you got an A+. Heck yes."
Exactly, right? And it's so clear that one is
now like, "Oh my gosh, I have to be better than the whole school every time." Perhaps, depending on
it can set an expectation.
Yes.
Again, in 70% of people, roughly, or whatever, And it continues to get reinforced.
And kids take what we say seriously.
Exactly. A parent can feel like they are reinforcing and being helpful and making their kid happy. And but like you said, if you say something as broad as, "Oh, you're the best in the world," or "You're the best at your school," or "Oh my gosh, you're better than all the other kids," or and another example you pointed out is, and then you go with other people and do that, right? That you play soccer and, "Oh, you're the best, you're so good." As a kid, you believe that, literally. And then you go and you play soccer and there are a bunch of people better than you. And instead of it feeling like, "Oh, okay, I got to get better and stuff," you thought, "Oh, wow, I'm way behind where I need to be."
The example I shared today was that, like, until I got to high school, I thought I was actually pretty hot stuff when it came to art. And I'd had a lot of praise being like, "Oh my God, you're such an amazing artist. You're like the best in the school," or something.
Like, literally, we're told these things that were, lies, so to speak. We're statistically unlikely at the very least. There was no reason somebody should have said them to you. Right? There was like a better way to do it.
Right.
Keel does say more than setting an expectation, it can become a core part of that kid's identity.
Yes.
And I think that's important. Is like, no, you're right. Like, it is. I say an expectation, but it's like an expectation that literally they spend their whole life trying to meet up to. Sorry to interrupt you, but it was so pertinent. It seemed.
Thank you, Keel, for being like the best, the most on top of saying IP. By the way.
Exactly. Yes, I am the best at math in my school, and my inherent value relies on that remaining the case. Exactly.
Right.
And that you art and math and this, like, I remember when my parents asked me, "Hey, why didn't you get good grades in math?" There was a shame that came with that at the time I didn't understand. I was in like middle school, right? But I remember like when they asked me, I didn't get great grades, and I don't remember why. I was probably not paying attention well, or I was going through some, who knows. But the point is, it was like so difficult to talk to them about it because it was so hard for it to not sound like they were saying, "Hey, I thought you were better than that."
Yeah.
It's and that can create these feelings.
Yeah. So the essay is going to be full. There's probably going to be a lot in there.
Cool. And there may be different things covering it. I know we talked about different angles on it potentially. We've found a lot to say about it, and that's not bad. If there are 3 major articles about imposter syndrome that cover various things, that's not bad for a whole project called Imposter Syndrome.
That's fair.
Yeah. Not a bad thing at all.
Because by getting to talk about it and, you guys getting to listen to this and the future viewers, like, now you get to consider it and be like, is it just imposter phenomena?
Exactly. And like you said, that self-reflection you can use on yourself rather than, and I guess that was another thing I wanted to touch on there was the idea that what we're talking about is balancing something that can be difficult. And you're kind of trying to ride this line where you don't want to be too overconfident, I can do anything, but you don't want to be so underconfident that you feel like everybody, and again, that's what's interesting, is it's not even like you feel like you can't do it, it's you feel like nobody else thinks you can, or that everybody else will think this or that about you.
Right.
What I want you to consider is if 70% of people are going through this, then statistically, if you are ever feeling imposter syndrome, 70% of the people you are worrying about looking at you, thinking you're an imposter, are instead doing what you are doing and looking at them. You are probably in their pool of thinking that they're an imposter. You have to consider that when you're having these feelings yourself. Use it as a superpower rather than trying to...
Or use it as a way to actually connect with people.
Exactly, that too. Yeah, consider the good it can do or
Yeah.
what it means about you as a person. You know,
Because you can actually both help yourself and help somebody else by, say, I think this is actually something Keel's kind of doing, is that he's also made his own zine, his online zine.
Oh, yes, yeah, he does. He publishes
and
stuff,
and reaches out to other creators to lift them up. And in a way, you get to kind of fulfill a mentoring role. But I'm like, that's what you do to help fight both your own imposter syndrome, but you also get to lift somebody up, give them validation and support. So if they have any of those same imposter phenomenon thoughts, like, you get to counteract those too, man. That's great. Hi, Gwen.
Exactly. So no, I think that is really helpful. Like you said, it doesn't have to be something that worries you. Let's say, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. So I am also very excited for the essays we come up with, the articles we try to call it. Essay is the most boring word for article ever.
I know, but just I got school in my mind.
I know. And
article.
In my heart, it's an essay, but article, I guess, is the word.
But I know you had some cool stuff too. You had a cool concept today called like game design cookbook.
Well, yeah, so...
Am I jumping into it?
No, not at all. I don't know why I laughed, but that's exactly what I had. But when you say it that way, it's like, I don't know, makes me giddy, maybe. Maybe that's it.
Are you excited?
But the important thing, yes, right, yeah. Keel says, interestingly, IP is like reverse Dunning-Kruger effect, believing you're way better at something than you actually are. Exactly. Dunning-Kruger, yeah, that's one of those not knowing what you don't know. You know,
I'm probably gonna have to bring that up. We gotta slide that in somewhere.
Right, exactly, and it's like it's yes, it is a very complementary, supplementary,
Absolutely.
one of those definitions phenomenon.
It's gonna be a long article. Okay,
it's right, exactly. But so we're working on this game design concept as part of this Kickstarter,
right?
You know, and so people that back it are supporting it, and part of what I'm doing is trying to find a way that it is helpful to get this information that I think is helpful to people to them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm just trying to do that in a helpful way. And I read programming books sometimes. I got one recently, and they're sometimes called cookbooks, and especially in programming, things have like funny names, and there is a
series with animals on the front.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, yes, right, okay. But there's a tool you can use called Chef, and there are, like, recipes, you know, whatever. But what's interesting is, so they call it a cookbook. I suppose what I'm saying is programming unabashedly just uses whatever terms they want, and you just get over it. You know, it's part of the allure and the charm, I suppose. But the idea is, these cookbooks are, instead of it being, I'm going to tell you from beginning to end everything you need to know about jQuery, right, a JavaScript framework that makes things very easy in the browser.
Right.
Say, right. I can start, but everybody starts with, like, the history of it. And then they go into, like, how to do the most basic thing. And I'm like, well, that's a helpful thing for some people. But there's also a jQuery cookbook. And it's just a list from beginning to end of different sections, usually, like various things you can try to accomplish that are literally just questions. So the table of contents becomes this list of questions that
you're trying to solve.
Yes, the problems that you might want a solution to. And then when you go to that question, you go, how can I make sure my skill checks are more meaningful? In any game, right? Not just like I'm running a D&D game, but in whether I'm creating a game or just playing a game with people.
Yeah.
That's the chapter title. And you click on that, and now this is a section about things to do with that, you know?
Okay.
That's one example, but some of them would be more mechanical. One of the ones I was kind of fleshing out a little bit before we streamed, you know, was how can I build status effects into my game without making the bookkeeping tedious? The point of, like, the recipe names, right, that's what we'll call them, these recipes, is to pose a question that makes you go, oh, wow, how would I do that? The important thing is, rather than starting at the bottom and just building up, like, oh, this is how you roll a die, you know, this is this, in this very, like, dry and maybe boring way, I guess. I don't think it's going to draw a lot of people, you know. I think instead, this allows me to take large abstract concepts and show people how I would solve them. And in that way, show them these patterns that I want to show off, so to speak, right? So by starting, like, with examples first, what I can do is I can entice people to want to know more, so to speak.
Right.
So by framing it that way, by putting it, you know, how can I simulate exploration in a concrete, mechanical way? Jeez. I'm not guaranteeing that this solution is going to be the best or the only solution, but the point would be, here's one way to do it. Even if you look at my solution and go, I hate this, here's what I would do. That is perfect. You now are on the way to doing what you would do because you hate mine.
Right.
That is okay. You know, so I think
So this is going to be like a series of questions, basically.
Yes,
that the
it would
person
be a
then goes
book,
to.
a PDF, some sort of, offering, so to speak, that would literally be a list of questions, and then it would be like a chapter, imagine, from beginning
Right.
to end, like discussing
kind of-
this problem.
Yeah, what kind of chapters do you think you would have? You know?
Well, so like I said, those would be some examples, like I want to, other ones would be, I don't want to draw a map. How can I simulate my players moving around meaningfully?
Okay.
And we'll at that point there would be a whole section on what I call the node and edge pattern, which is just really in a graph, right?
That's okay. It's a graph.
Right, in a graph. Well, but it's not a graph. That's me doing that to me about not having to over-explain.
Got it.
But in this thing in programming and in math called a graph,
Right.
there are nodes, which are places you can go, and edges, which are things to travel between nodes.
Okay.
So instead of creating a map that the players can actually visually see, instead you create an abstract concept of, well, from here you can get these 3 places.
Okay.
Well, it's a map,
Yeah.
but the point is, it's like a point-and-click adventure game in the old days, if you think about it. You could go up, or you could go right, or you could go down. And then from there, you could go somewhere, but there wasn't a whole map of the thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? You just had to...
You had to explore.
But in a sense, you can abstractly set it up so that you can have this map. And that would be, one of the... So, I guess from... chapters isn't the right word, I guess. So those would be the chapters, right?
Right,
Those would be the
because I want to
solutions.
see how
But let's back out one more level.
I want to see how it's broken up. Like, for instance, I had a creature design book that I was perusing, and what is it? It's broken up into like functionality. That's not true.
Well, and that's okay. But I think I know
yeah.
more what you mean. Is we did, I was doing some writing, and I was talking about the different parts that will be available for the game design framework.
And Keel mentions that using specific examples to demonstrate each recipe/module will be super helpful.
Exactly.
Certainly agree.
And I think that's something that's really important is, doing it this way, by posing a question and answering it, I feel like you present a much more meaningful solution to a problem.
Okay.
One of the big issues I see with programming, like books and different things, are they'll teach you a concept by modeling something that you'll never use in programming. It's kind of like teaching you math by having you do equations that you would never use for that. I don't know, maybe that's not a good example.
Right, that
but
would
it's
be
like,
a little frustrating.
but it's a little too abstract. Whereas if I say, no, I'm trying to do this specific thing, it's a little clearer. I can explain why I'm doing what I want to do. I can tell you the kind of gameplay experience I'm trying to curate. I can, again, we can have a much more meaningful discussion, so to
Right.
speak, by phrasing it that way, rather than putting it down as, rather than just enumerating all the different parts of games and going, okay, now figure out how to put them together.
Right.
Well, the part that people are saying is, well, no, I see all the different parts of games. Tell me how to put them together. The showing those patterns off, I think, is going to be an important part.
Right. Keel also mentions it's like an FAQ format, which is very clever.
Exactly.
And that's what I was imagining, but how are you going to break up that FAQ? Because do the questions, are they broken up with like relatability to each other? And what are those?
And that's
blocks?
where those sections, exactly. I totally know what you
Those
mean.
sections. So that's what I meant by chapters.
Yes, and that was my fault, as I consider that more sections, and that was my bad.
Right,
It's
but
just a
FAQ
terminology
format
thing, right?
helps a lot.
Exactly, but so let's say this. So it's a series of sections of which we'll go over what's in each one.
Okay.
And then those sections have chapters, which are the recipes, the
Got it.
solutions to the problems, right?
All
Just to get everybody on the same page, because you're right, I didn't. But so, one of the things will be let's see.
Right, this is a brand new concept.
This is a brand new
Okay.
concept, but I wrote what is going to be a part of the framework, but now I have to try to rework that for the question I'm trying to answer, and I thought that'd be easy.
Okay.
But the idea is, my plan is for there to be a compatible of these agnostic components.
Correct.
That you will be able to put together and make your own game.
And agnostic meaning that they could be applied to like any game?
Any game, yes,
Or
exactly.
you can make
if-
any game out of it?
Yeah,
Okay.
like totally neutral of anything.
Okay.
It's like you can use these to be like D&D, or to be like Shadows in the Dark, or to be like whatever, or to make your own game. It's
Got
it's
it,
like
alright.
it's an interesting thing, I think, because I'm trying to step back from here's my game, build something out of the pieces of it. It's here are the pieces, build a game out of the pieces.
Right.
So my plan is to have these agnostic components and game design patterns. So I guess I'm not sure yet. Like you said, now that I know I want to do the cookbook format, which is like a concept I think we discussed and I realized today, I'm not actually sure exactly how it's going to be broken up yet. And I think I'll need to think on that a little bit more. And part of the Kickstarter, part of why I want people to back is for this type of feedback. I want to create a game design framework that people can use to make games and to more easily help us discuss games and iterate on games. But I want them to be interested to do so, and I want their input on what that looks like. I don't feel confident that I can create exactly what people will need from my perspective. I think having people say, oh, that's helpful, that's not, that really helped me, this was really confusing. That is so good to have, rather than trying to go away in a silo and create something and then come out and go, oh, here it is, and people go, it's indecipherable, I don't know what to tell you. I want that feedback sooner.
For some future video/updates, should we do that kind of like a work in progress show and tell?
Yes, I think there will be a lot of that is like, hey, this is what I'm kind of thinking, is this sort of thing helpful to you? Is this information, a higher level than you were looking for, or is this really basic and you're kind of like, you were hoping it was going to be meatier than that?
Right.
I would love people to back the Kickstarter that want to be a part of the creation, be a part of this process, and be a part of helping me realize this. Again, yes, from that standpoint of offering feedback to make it something really cool that we all love, that hopefully then other people will like. But I feel like there could potentially be a small group of people that interested enough, could provide feedback on this, and it could be something really cool.
Yeah.
Keel says, I'm legit so excited to get my hands on your game design framework /cookbook. I'm even more excited now to write it, knowing that I want it to be in that format, because it's sort of clearer than ever.
Good.
It also means I get to make a bunch of little game pieces, so to speak, and then just say, oh, well, what question does that answer? I get to have a fun sandbox. And yes, we definitely plan some work in progress, show and tells, live streams and stuff.
I'm not sure what that's going to look like. I'm curious to get people's feedback as far as creature creation. I feel like that's all that I talk about.
Well, it's okay. Last week we talked about your fiction as well a little bit. Right. We did. So yeah.
But personally, I guess it's on my mind a lot.
That's fair.
But
we
of
do
course,
talk about it.
besides Nixon here, I definitely need some feedback to know what people are looking for, because the things that I think are meaningful might not matter to everybody. But I don't know. I think
exactly.
It's important.
I think there's something to being able to...
There's something to it.
Yes, there's something to having people say, immediately, or not immediately, but having somebody interested enough to say, hey, if it were me, I would really love something like this.
Yeah.
Because even if it's one person, I would love to create something perfect for that person, or a few people. Because that at least means it should be relatable to some other people.
Yeah.
But I'm fine making it pretty tailored for the single person that's listening. If that makes sense. Keel says, yes, we got to get the word out everywhere to get this thing funded. Yeah, there's 15 days left, something like that, even less than that, I think. And so, yes, we're coming up through the middle here.
Almost halfway.
Almost halfway. Very excited. And I think especially as we get more content and are able to throw more stuff, more concrete things that people in these live streams will really help.
Right,
hopefully they'll see what we're trying to do,
Right, I'll try to do some more artwork.
Art walk on the pier, no.
I've been trying to do like a little picture of a crucial moment in Grisnek and Varga's story that I think that's the story I'm going to have to share. I just don't know. There's so many. There's so many like climax points for characters that I'm not sure which one I want to share and elaborate on. It's hard to choose.
It's hard to pick. You'll have to pick a couple, maybe at least. Yeah.
Right.
And Keel says, Red, I'm super jazzed for your inclusion on creature design.
Thank you.
I'm very excited. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. That was great.
End it here. This has been a really great stream. We will see you next Friday for the next one, I believe. But we'll post more about that. Thank you so much for joining us. Back Imposter Syndrome on Kickstarter right now. You can find a link down in the description. $5 gets you access to meaningful character creation, fiction in a world where the embodiment of magic decays, and that creates magic in the world and creates all kinds of side effects.
It's essentially release magic into the world, all that stuff. I'm going to be, talking about imposter syndrome, of course.
All else is rubbish. A plane-to-plane fighting and customization game. Like really cool ideas for the character sheet for that. Adjusting your throttle and your altitude and seeing your speed and everything and your
Oh,
weight.
it's gonna
so
be a fun one.
I think I have really high hope for that. I think it's gonna be really cool. So thank you everybody for joining us. We will see everybody next week, and back Imposter Syndrome on Kickstarter.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out. Have a good
Spanish
night.
Chair, everybody. Have a good night.